Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you are watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of the hour. Israel says the remains returned by Hamas belong to Joshua Letu Molel, a Tanzanian student killed in the October the 7th, 2023 attack. His body was taken to Gaza and returned under the US brokered ceasefire deal. Ukrainian drones struck targets across Russia, killing one person and igniting a fire near a major refinery in Volgograd. Moscow says at least 75 drones were used as Kyiv intensifies attacks on Russian energy sites while Moscow advances in eastern Ukraine. Lebanon's Hezbollah says it has a legitimate right to resist Israeli occupation and will support the National Army. The group added that while it respects the ceasefire, it is not obliged to join political talks with Israel after recent border clashes. President Donald Trump says he wants New York to succeed under Mayor-elect Mamdani, but warned the Democratic Socialist must be respectful of Washington. Trump, who earlier called Mamdani a communist, says his administration may offer limited help to the city. Prince William has announced the 5 winners of the Earthshot 2025 prize in Rio de Janeiro, celebrating innovators committed to solving global environmental challenges, with each receiving £1 million of a grant. This year marks the halfway point in the Earthshot's 10-year mission. President Vladimir Putin has ordered officials to prepare proposals for resuming Russian nuclear tests, warning of reciprocal measures if the US proceeds. The move comes after President Trump directed America to restart testing for the first time since 1992. The US will reduce flight capacity by 10% in 40 major air traffic areas from Friday as the government shutdown strains staffing. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy warned of widespread disruptions as the FAA struggles to maintain operations. Now at least 140 people are dead and 127 injured, missing after Typhoon Kalamagi triggered catastrophic flooding across central Philippines. Officials say the storm is now moving towards Vietnam as rescue teams struggle to reach cut-off areas. Now we have some brand new breaking news coming out of the Middle East, and Israel has confirmed that the remains handed over by Hamas belong to Joshua Loitu Molel, a Tanzanian student whose body was taken to Gaza after he was killed during the October the 7th attack. Hamas has returned the remains as part of the ongoing ceasefire deal, which was brokered by US President Donald Trump. The Israeli Prime Minister's office said the following the completion of the identification process, the family of Joshua Loitu Molel was informed by the Israeli government and his remains to be soon handed over to them. This development comes as part of ongoing efforts to implement the ceasefire and facilitate the return of hostages and remains held by Hamas, despite intermittent strikes. We're now joined by Peter Baum. He's the foreign editor of the Weekly Blitz, and he joins us live from London to discuss this further. Peter, thank you very much for joining us, as always. Of course, now the Israeli government has confirmed that these transferred remains are Tanzanian student who was kidnapped on October the 7th. How big of a development is this, and what does it show about the current progress of the ceasefire deal? And also, of course, what can we expect next?
Yeah, good day, Thomas, and thank you again for having me on your programme.
Pleasure.
Well, this must be seen by all players as a positive move, albeit there has been a drip feed of dead hostages released by Hamas, but nevertheless, again, it's another body recovered, and the poor Tanzanians' parents can grieve properly now. What is more interesting, though, Thomas, is going to be the release of the remaining hostages, and let me explain why. Hamas are suggesting that these remaining 4 hostages are held in a tunnel east of the yellow line where Israel has operational control. And that tunnel has been accommodating up to 150 to 200 Hamas operatives who are actually trapped in the tunnel. Hamas are saying, look, the dead bodies are within that tunnel, and Israel aren't believing that. And there's been calls from Hamas to its interlocutors to try and get Israel to release the Hamas operatives. And Netanyahu is saying no. In fact, the last information I had was that cement was being poured into that particular tunnel in order to coerce the Hamas operatives to come out. So delighted that the Tanzanian student body has been relocated to Israel. But nevertheless, I think the remaining 4 bodies are going to be a significant issue and going forward as to how well the ceasefire holds up. So all I can say is, Thomas, we'll have to watch this space closely in the next 48 hours to see if any more bodies are being released before the trapped Hamas operatives get out from their tunnels.
Yeah, and Peter, of course, logistically, it's proving hard to retrieve these bodies. Of course, 80% of Gaza is now rubble. If in the situation, the scenario where these hostage bodies cannot be retrieved, what happens then? Do we completely stop moving on to that second stage of this ceasefire?
Well, this is the whole point, Thomas. Well, no one knows, because it's imperative from Israeli society that those bodies are released to their loved ones. It is a fundamental principle of what drives Judaism, Zionism, call it what you like, but it's imperative that the grieving process cannot begin until those bodies are returned. Now, Hamas well knows this. Netanyahu seems to believe that those bodies are not within that particular tunnel, and therefore Israeli intelligence seems to believe that the bodies are well known to Hamas and where they are. So it would be very, very interesting to see what the next 48 hours brings. If Hamas stick to their guns and their propaganda machine and say, look, we're sorry, but those bodies are within the tunnel, and unless you let our operatives free, then it really does imperil the phase 1 of the ceasefire agreement. It is that important. This is a tipping point. Israel wants the bodies back. The Israeli cabinet believe that Hamas know where they are, and Hamas are saying, we're not giving the bodies back because they're in the tunnels, and we want our operatives released, because those Hamas terrorists are absolutely isolated. They're trapped, and Netanyahu, frankly, wants to see them eliminated.
Okay, yes, Peter, thank you very much. Do stay with us as we have further updates coming out of the enclave, where in Gaza transportation has become a daily struggle as residents navigate broken roads and few working vehicles. Passengers are crammed into carts hitched to damaged cars as families and workers stand hours hoping for a ride, a makeshift solution as options grow scarce. 2 years of Israeli bombardment have left much of Gaza devastated, killing some 68,000 people, according to Gaza health authorities. This is what some of the Palestinians who are traveling had to say.
بالحرب كانت المواصلات تروح على غزة وتيجي من غزة ب7 شيكل بالضبط، وإيش توقف في الكرسي اللي قدام وفاضي ومبحبح. اليوم أنا يعني إلي ساعة هنا بستنى سيارة أطلع على غزة على دوامي ببلش على الساعة 7:30، هي الساعة 7. طب أنا لقيت عبين ما ألاقي سيارة وأروح على غزة بدي بالراحة ساعتين أو ساعة ونص عبين ما ألاقي إيش سيارة وأركب فيها. طبعا ناهيك عن الطريق وتكسير الطريق وظهرك حيروح، وكنا بدنا غضروف، وكنا صار عندنا دمار جسمي بشكل مش طبيعي من أزمة.
صراحة احنا في غزة بنعاني من أزمة خانقة في المواصلات. أول حاجة السيارات يعني صعبة، سواء انها صارت قديمة أو مكسرة، سواء كمان فيش سيارات يعني عدد محدود اللي ضل في السيارات، وصار يحطوا في السيارة نفسها ورا زي بسموها عجلان نقعد فيها طول الطريق يعني بنتكسر لما نصل مثلا من الانصارات لغزة. غير الأجرات كمان برضه مرتفعة كثير يعني في غزة، يعني الواحد مش حمل إنه كل يوم يدفع أجرات بالمبالغ هذه.
وضعنا في المواصلات صعب جدا وغالي جدا، وغير لائقه بالبني ادمين بالبشر. احنا بنركب في وسائل مواصلات صعبه جدا، يعني بتضيف على معاناتنا معاناه. المريض بيزيد مرضه، اللي عنده غضروف وضعه صعب جدا انه يركب هذه المواصلات.
Okay, moving on now. Hamas says that a senior delegation led by Khalil al-Hayya met with Turkish intelligence chief Ibrahim Kalin in Istanbul to discuss the fragile ceasefire in Gaza. According to a statement from the group, the talks focused on ongoing Israeli military activity, the closure of key crossings and urgent efforts to rebuild Gaza's damaged infrastructure, which includes sewage, roads and electricity works. Hamas officials also reaffirmed their commitment to the ceasefire agreement and to transferring Gaza's administration to an independent Palestinian committee. The meeting comes just days after the same delegation held discussions with Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan. Of course, we will bring you more updates on that once we get them here on NewsX World. Moving over to Lebanon for our next story, and Hezbollah, in a recent statement, has strongly asserted that it has a legitimate right to defend itself against Israel, and also confirmed support for the Lebanese Army. The armed group from Lebanon has also rejected any political negotiations with Tel Aviv. This comes as Israel warns that it may intensify operations against Hezbollah. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has further accused the group of rearming and said Israel would act if Lebanon fails to prevent its territory from becoming a new battlefront for what it calls militant actions. In a latest development, Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has instructed the army to respond to any Israeli incursions in the south after Israeli forces crossed the border and killed a municipal employee. Just last Sunday, Israeli forces killed 4 Hezbollah members as Defense Minister Katz urged Lebanon to disarm the group and remove it from southern Lebanon. Now, Peter Baum joins us once again. Peter, of course, we have to bear in mind that a ceasefire was signed between Hezbollah and Israel in November of 2024. Now, Israel said today that within the past month, 20 Hezbollah operatives, or what it calls Hezbollah operatives, alleged Hezbollah operatives, were killed over the past month. Hezbollah says it has the right to defend itself. How do you see this as its rhetoric? Is it preparing for wider confrontation?
Definitely. Hezbollah is trying to rebuild itself after its catastrophic defeat during the two-year war that Israel and Hamas were going through. It's trying to recruit more people. It's trying to regenerate arms supply via Iran. But Hezbollah has a problem, and that is it no longer can rely on the support of Iran as it did before, because Iran itself is very weakened, and it certainly cannot rely on any support from the new regime in Syria, which are diametrically opposed to the Iranian regime and to Hezbollah. So the statements must be considered carefully, and there is no doubt that Hezbollah, as an institution politically, is nowhere near defeated. Militarily, has been battered, but is trying nevertheless to rearm itself. What is interesting is that Iran shielded herself pre-October 7th with proxies such as Hezbollah and the Houthis, Hamas, etc. And in its northern border, Israel actually herself, apart from her own ability to fight Hezbollah, is also being assisted undoubtedly by the Syrian regime, and also, despite President Aoun's statements, by Lebanon, who are committed under pressure from President Trump to disarm Hezbollah. Unfortunately, the Lebanese army for years has been underfunded and still has quite a number of Shia Muslims within its ranks. So it's going to be very difficult for the Lebanese army to act impartially and to try and achieve the objectives that President Trump wants it to achieve. But the current Lebanese administration know only too clearly well that they cannot grow economically as a nation with a military group like Hezbollah still very influential in its affairs. So I do suspect that though Hezbollah will try to regroup and rearm, I think that they will come across three players now, which they never have before, being the Syrian regime, Israel, and the Lebanese army themselves, that will try and ensure that their influence is nothing like it was in the very recent past.
Yeah, but Peter, of course, Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has instructed the army to respond to any Israeli incursions in the south. This comes after Israeli forces crossed an agreed border and killed a municipal employee. Israel says it wants to work with the Lebanese government. If it continues doing actions like this, coming into land that it says it's not going to, how can it expect to work with Joseph Aoun and his army in disarming Hezbollah?
Very good question. But Thomas, you have to understand, I'm sure you do, that the Lebanese president and cabinet have a domestic audience that they must placate. And by making statements that, such as Aoun has instructed the Lebanese army to confront, to challenge any Israeli incursions, is what is expected from someone in his position and someone who is treading a very narrow political tightrope. Nevertheless, we understand that the Trump administration and his ambassador to Lebanon, Thomas Barak, are fully supportive of Israel's incursions against Hezbollah. They are encouraging the Lebanese government to do more, but as I said before, because of the lack of qualified personnel, let's say, in the Lebanese army, that's going to be difficult. And it's clear that what the Lebanese president is saying is naturally to be expected, because he's a politician and he has a domestic audience full, many of whom are Shia Muslims, who in fact support Hezbollah. They may not support the military wing of Hezbollah, although I'm sure many of them do, but politically, I think this was an astute statement from President Aoun, in the knowledge that Israel will continue to, let's say, hurt Hezbollah as and when they see fit. The Lebanese know that, the Syrians know that, the Americans know that, and Israel will not allow Hezbollah to rearm and regroup to the potential it had pre-October 7th.
Yes, Peter Baum, thank you very much for bringing your insights. It's always a pleasure to talk to you on these West Asian matters. We move over to Europe. for our next story. And NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has warned that Russia will remain a destabilizing force in Europe and beyond, even after the war in Ukraine ends. Speaking at an industry forum in Bucharest, Rutte said that the alliance is now turning recent summit decisions into action, including a major pledge by NATO leaders to invest 5% of GDP in defence by 2035. He also said that this commitment will boost spending on jets, tanks, ships, drones, cyber and space capabilities, all aimed at strengthening NATO's deterrence. Rutte stressed that these threats faced by the alliance are real and lasting, pointing to Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine as a reminder of the need for real firepower and advanced technology to keep member states safe. Let's in fact take a listen in to the NATO Secretary General.
I believe the whole summit in The Hague, including what we organized in the context of industry, was historic. It was successful. And we took important decisions to make NATO much stronger. And the President already mentioned a few of them. Because at that occasion, NATO leaders decided to invest 5% of GDP in defense by 2035. 5%. And we all know that's serious money. That's serious spending. But it is what we need to stay safe. As part of this, leaders agreed to buy more defense capabilities, including jets, tanks, ships, but also drones, ammunition, cyber and space capabilities. We are now turning these decisions into action. We need the capabilities, we need the equipment, real firepower, and of course, the most advanced tech. Because the threats we face are real and lasting. Russia's unprovoked war against Ukraine is the most obvious example of the threat. But the danger posed by Russia will not end when this war does. For the foreseeable future, Russia will remain a destabilizing force in Europe.
We're now joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at the Hudson Institute and he joins us live from Tokyo in Japan. Dr. Nagao, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. NATO's Mark Rutte says Russia will remain a destabilising force. Do you agree? And what does that mean for Europe in particular's long-term security outlook, especially after the drone incursions into the likes of Poland and Romania? Estonia, sorry.
Yeah, in this case, I completely agree indeed. Because real moves, Russia has invaded Ukraine and most of the other countries in the world hasn't tried such kind of clear invasion against other country. So that's why this is one of the evidence that we cannot trust Russia. But other provocation indicate that recently drone fighter jet tried to enter the NATO countries' territory area. So why they need to do that is, of course, Russia try to check or provoking the other country without hesitation. So that is another example. Because most of the other countries in the world hasn't tried such kind of the provocation, but Russia did. So Russia is different. But finally, this is very important because recently, because of the sanction against Russia, Russia is rely on China. And China could be the most serious competitor of the United States, so US-China competition will escalate it. In this case, which side Russia will be is a matter. Of course, view from the United States, view from the Europe, they want to divide the relation between Russia and China, but the reality is completely opposite. Russia is relying on China, and if China moves, Russia will follow. It's the pattern recently. So that's why view from this, if the US-China competition escalated, Russia will be threat of the US side, which means that's the threat of NATO. And in case of Europe, they also see the two more aspects to prove the Russia is threat. Firstly, the historical background. Russia is expanding in the territory in the past, especially ice-free port is the matter. Of course, Arctic ice is melting, and Russia is getting the ice-free port in the Arctic. But at the same time, they can remember the history. The Russia is invading the territories, the side step by step. That was the pattern. And another one is the character of the leadership. Putin want to regain the power like the Soviet Union, and he believed losing the territory or disbanding the Soviet Union itself is a failure. In this case, how to regain the power is matter. So view from this character itself is also matter of concern. So view from this one real move or historical background or character of leadership, all of this indicated that Russia could be the threat against European countries. So that's why NATO chief said clearly, I think.
Yes, and of course, he has praised this new policy, which of course which had pressure put on it by Donald Trump. 5% of GDP by 2035. All NATO countries agreed, apart from Spain. Does this mean that NATO as a bloc, as a defence treaty, is seen as more seriously now? He is saying that decisions made during all these summits that have been held are now turning into action.
Yes, they are serious, I think, because without Europeans share the more security burden to protect Ukraine, protect Europe, Europe will lose the war in Ukraine. Because United States need to focusing on China, and China is only country can be the threat against the #1 status of the United States in the world. So that's why the U.S. need to focus on China in the long run. In this case, in case of Russia, the European country must take the security burden. In this case, without raising the defense budget, they cannot deal with. So, of course, this is long-term process. If they need to prepare the huge budget immediately, it is impossible. But at the same time, in the long run, anyway, US will withdraw step by step, and the Europeans need to take charge more. That will come. So, raising the budget they must do it.
Yes, Dr. Nagal, thank you very much for joining us. As always, pleasure to have you on the programme. We now move over to the Indo-Pacific for our next story. And Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has declared a state of national calamity after Typhoon Kalamegi killed at least 140 people and left another 127 missing in the central provinces. The move allows the government to release funds for aid and impose price ceilings on basic necessities. Most of the deaths are reported in Cebu, where flash floods and overflowing rivers caused widespread devastation. Among the dead were 6 people who have been killed in a Philippine Air Force helicopter crash while delivering humanitarian aid to areas battered by the typhoon. Kalamegi has moved from western Palawan into the South China Sea and is heading towards Vietnam, according to forecasters. Authorities say this is the deadliest natural disaster in the Philippines this year and the world's deadliest so far in 2025. Let's listen in to Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s statements.
Of the scope of, shall we say, problem areas that will be hit, that has been hit by Tino and will be hit by Uwan, there was a proposal from the NDRMC, which I approved, that we will declare a national calamity. Because ilang regions na yan, there will be almost 10 regions, 10, 12 regions that will be affected. So, pagka ganun karami, ganun ang scope, then we will really have to, then it is a national calamity. So,
now, Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum has pressed charges after being groped on the streets near Mexico's National Palace. She said that the assault reflects the daily reality faced by women across the country. In a video circulating online of the incident, it shows a man appearing to touch Scheinbaum and leans on her as she was taking a walk from the National Palace to the Education Ministry amid a political rally. Scheinbaum pushed the man's hands away and continued walking. Giving further details on the incident, Scheinbaum has said that the man appeared to be intoxicated. The Mexico City Mayor, Clara Berguga, has said that the man has now been arrested. Meanwhile, speaking on the incident, she also said that she has experienced harassment before as a student as well, and that she will not increase her security or change how she moves in public spaces. Let's take a listen in to the Mexican president and her statements on the issue.
La segunda es este lamentable episodio que ocurrió caminando de aquí de Palacio Nacional a la SEP. ¿Por qué me fui caminando? Porque es más corto, no tiene ninguna otra explicación. Si salimos en auto, se nos había hecho tarde, si salíamos en auto íbamos a llegar 20 minutos después. Y fuero común, presenté denuncia. Resulta que esta persona después estuvo acosando a otras mujeres, ahí mismo en esa calle. Entonces está detenido esta persona.
Now, the incident puts the focus on Mexico's troubling record on women's safety, with sexual harassment commonplace and rights groups warning of a femicide crisis. According to the United Nations data, around 70% of Mexican women aged 15 and over experience at least one incident of sexual harassment in their lives. Here's how the Mexican women have reacted to Scheinbaum's harassment incident.
Es una falta de respeto simplemente por el hecho de ser mujer y bueno, también a cualquier hombre, pero más por la investidura que representa la presidenta, ¿no? Mucho más grave, para mí se me hace grave en el metro, en cualquier lugar, que a una mujer traten de acosarla, porque a mí alguna vez me pasó de adolescente, me pasó y es horrible, pero en ese entonces todo el mundo se quedaba callado, no decía nada, y lo escondías porque te da.
Es algo muy común y creo que debe dejar de normalizarse. Hay que hacer la denuncia de que esto no está bien. No está bien que nos estén tocando y que sienta que porque andamos en la calle pueden tocar nuestro cuerpo. Eso no.
Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.